Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kelsey and let's tackle some arcs again. So a lot of my goals this year is to really wind down my physical TBR, but that makes me forget about my electronic TBR. And part of that is my NetGalley arcs. So if I don't remind myself constantly to tackle them, I never will. So I have to force myself with you, keep me accountable, and read some arcs. So today we will be reading 3 arcs that came out during the months of May and June. Is it August when you're seeing this video? Yes. We're not going to talk about it. So the first book I read for this vlog is Not Your Final Girl by Michaela Rudolph. By the title alone, I think you could tell that this is a slasher novel, and we're looking at a group of friends who go to a cabin up in the woods and they start to be picked off one by one. Similarly, the next arc that I read for this vlog is Slasher Summer by E.L. Chen. Does anyone want to guess what this one is about? Indeed, it is also following a group of friends, but here it's a little different. This group of friends comes from a town where a slasher film was set. And so these kids often would play the live reenactments of these slashings during midnight showings of the movie, for example. So they've become like pseudo celebrities in their town. This is the last summer that they can get together as friends at the setting of the slasher. And as they are celebrating together at the cabin, they slowly get to be picked off one by one. And then the last book I read for this vlog is not a slasher, unfortunately. It is House of Margins by Tloto Samase. And this is more of like a haunted house narrative where we're following 2 main characters, one named Ranewa, whose sister Anaya was invited to come to this house as sort of like a writing retreat. And it is about a year and a half later when Ranewa receives new information about her sister's disappearance. So I'll take you back to Kelsey 1 week ago. We'll get into these arcs and we'll come back at the end. Hello, welcome to the first clip of this vlog. I am 100 or so pages, 33% of the way through The Last Final Girl by Michaela something. Oh my god, I completely forgot what it's called. My iPad is charging and my laptop is also charging and I record on my phone. Anyways, you have the photo here. I'm so sorry to Michaela, but this follows a group of, they're young adults at this point, but they were all best friends in high school. And every summer they would go to this specific chalet, one of their friends' chalets, or cabins as Americans like to call it. And they would spend the summer there. They were all really, really close best friends. Obviously, there are like specific dynamics that are not boding well in adulthood that worked well when they were teenagers. But regardless, it's a pretty typical setup. We have had one chapter in the perspective of one of the kids' parents who is slashed at the beginning portion of the novel. I think he might be the opening chapter. He's definitely one of the earlier chapters, so you don't originally know who he is, but then as you're meeting the kids in the house and each kid has their own perspective chapter, you're like, oh, this is the dad of these 2 girls. So we're following each individual character, which I think could be a lot, but because this is a fairly easy like story to kind of follow, it's not that hard with the amount of POVs that are available. 2 important, I think, POVs that we're following is one by a character named Suwa, and she is the girlfriend of what would have been the most popular girl in the group. And so she's like who we are basically. She's coming into this preconceived group. She's trying to understand dynamics. She's trying to understand like why some of them are mad at one another, why the other important character, why this newcomer coming into the group is so important. This other character is not a newcomer to the group necessarily, but she is the youngest sister of one of their friends who had passed, I believe, or is still in a mental asylum. I don't remember exactly which is which. I'm not going to spoil how this friend ends up in a mental asylum, but they do, and it is due to murder, but I won't explain like what exactly happened because I think that's what makes the first third of the book to be quite intriguing, is understanding these dynamics and how this character, Eliza's sister Tess, plays into the dynamics that we're seeing today and why they are so like on edge and tense at this cabin. There's also been a scene at the cabin that feels like we're meeting the slasher from that chapter where he murdered Eliza, essentially Eliza and Tessa's dad. It's from the perspective of one of the boys who brought Eliza there, and he's like, ugh, like Nate, which is the other guy, needs to stop like playing pranks. The slasher clearly knows enough about this group that he's dressing up, from what I understand, in one of their like prankful outfits, which is like a hooded cape. Obviously, as we know, typical for slasher films, they like to scare each other, and that's why they're not as scared as they should be when they're at a chalet in the woods. That's where we are right now. I don't know if it's supposed to be a red herring, like we're supposed to think one of them is the slasher. I don't know. I'm not 100% sure. I'm going to read another third in it hopefully tonight. I'm really hoping my iPad charges fast, but I'll likely update you tomorrow. Hello. So I have reached another 1/3 of the way through Not Your Final Girl. No. What is this book called? Oh my god. Anyways, it's by Michaela Rudolph, which now I have the author's name and not the book's name. Regardless, you would think that it's not making an impression on me, but actually I'm finding it to be quite captivating. I think it's the amount of short, quick chapters. We're getting every single character's perspective. We're understanding their motivations. We're understanding what makes them tick, sort of. And I think it's because we're spending so many chapters with them and we're spending so much time with them that we're beginning to understand them at a level that I don't think really applies sometimes in slasher movies. Like a lot of the time, there are the more minor characters that we don't really understand them. But I find in here, because what they did to their friend Tess in high school is so astronomically horrible in regards to like the type of bullying that we usually see in these slasher films, we really understand like why they chose to do the things that they did. I have some issues with the overall writing style. I find the writing to be a bit simplistic for my taste, at least, but because it is a slasher, it's not like that big of a deal to me. Like I'm not coming into this book expecting like the most eloquent and philosophically captivating prose I've ever read in my life. I'm really just looking to have fun. In fact, last night I was reading it, a kill happened, and I was genuinely afraid. I was sitting in my house alone in the dark. My son was sleeping. My partner was at hockey, and I was like, oh my god, there's literally no one here. So it did scare me in a way that I think I always enjoy from slasher movies, film, any sort of media. So yeah, I think it's doing what it's setting out to do, which is to have a really engaging and fun, fast-paced slasher, which I don't think I can expect anything more from this book. And I think the kills are honestly quite gory, which I appreciate in a slasher. I like when the kills are creative. So this killer in particular is using a bident. Honestly, I didn't know there was a difference between a trident and a bident and whatever when we see them in like mythological images, but apparently there is. And so I think that that weapon's kind of cool. Right now we're really getting into like what we see in like the midpoint of like any sort of slasher film, where they are not necessarily turning on one another but really looking inward at their dynamics and how those dynamics could be a reason to do the things that is occurring right now. And then also I always love when slasher films reference one another. So there has been references to Scream, there has been references to Halloween. Those are two things that I just enjoy. As a lover of slashers, I really like when slashers reference each other. I think it's fun and there's a reason why they're doing it. As for references, I think this book references Harry Potter a little too much. Wouldn't surprise me if Michaela Rudolph is a millennial, because it's bordering on like, okay, it's 2026. Like I don't think we need to reference Harry Potter this much. But the characters are also millennials, so I don't know, maybe there's a commentary there, but I doubt it. I think maybe this is just like a fun, quirky little reference. So I'm going to continue. I have the last third. I have my theory as to what potentially is going on, but I don't know if I'm going to be right. I think it's a fairly obvious killer. We'll see. I don't know. There could be a little twist. I'm really hoping there's a little twist. I am like one with slashers, so I always really love figuring out who the killer is, and I always love being shocked by who the killer is. So it could go either way, and I'm very excited about it. Actually, I just realized as I'm like reading the book that there's 3 characters we don't get their perspective from. So we don't get the perspective of Tess. Obviously, she's supposed to be in a mental asylum. So she's like out of the picture. She's not at the chalet. We don't get Nate's perspective, which is Tess's ex-boyfriend from high school, who is currently banging her sister. Do with that what you will. And then we also don't get this character named Spence's perspective, and Spence is one of their friends who was in love with Letty, and Letty used to date Kai, who was the first kill. And so they're a little bit suspicious of Spence, but I think Spence, not that he's a red herring, because I don't think I ever believed he was the killer, but I think Spence is meant to be like, maybe he is the killer, which makes me question the perspectives that aren't in the book. So Tess and Nate specifically, because otherwise I think it might be fairly silly. We're in the perspectives of these characters, so we're in their heads, and if they're not talking about killing, it would be weird. So now I'm like, oh, I just realized that there's 3 characters that don't have a perspective at all. So that makes them a little bit suspicious, I must say. Hello, so I'm about to go pick up my son, but I did want to give you some updates. The first update is that I finished Not Your Final Girl by Michaela Randolph. Look at me getting both the name and the author right. I ended up giving this a 3 stars overall. Should I have read most of this book alone in my house relatively at nighttime? Probably not. But like I said, was this generally a fun time? Yes. If you enjoy slasher books, I do think that this is a great one. As I mentioned in my previous updates, I have some nitpicky thoughts about the prose, but the chapters were so short that I didn't really have time to dwell on it, and I was able to just speed through the book at such a quick pace. I've seen it as a main complaint, I think, in a lot of the reviews that there are too many POVs for the book, but I genuinely didn't mind it, and I find it made the pacing really, really quick, as I said. The kills were gory, and the overall psychological discussion on their friendship dynamics, I think, was really interesting. I will give a trigger warning for sexual assault and extreme high school bullying, because I do think that those added severely to the dynamics of the characters, but they are very heavily described. They are the main motivating factor for our killer. So there's a lot of these explanations when it comes to talking about their dynamics. So just so you know about that before diving in. However, I did find that this motivation felt a little weird for who the ultimate slasher was. But regardless, aside from the slasher's motivation, I did find the ending to be really enjoyable overall. And I would recommend it for sheer enjoyment. So I tend to do my arc reviews in publishing order, especially when I'm behind, like I am currently right now. But I was really in the slasher mood, and I had another slasher arc that is still behind schedule, but only by 1 month. And so I decided just to tag along with the theme of slasher books, I guess. I decided to pick up Slasher Summer by E.L. Chen. This is about 7 friends who reunite at a cabin. Very similar to the last book. The sleepy town of Cedar Lake is best known for the location of a campy 80s horror flick. And the story is following this group of 7 friends who used to partake in the reenactment of this horror film. So it's the tourism that sort of keeps this city alive. And if you think about it, it's kind of like Scream movies, where Scream has sort of become this thing within a thing, and they enjoy watching that movie. And so this is sort of what's happening. They're reenacting the movie during the movie as real characters. However, when the night falls at this cabin, the lights go out, the phones are dead, the tires are slashed, and a killer is running amok. So the first 1/3 of the novel is really just expanding on that synopsis. And we've just gotten to the fact that one of the friends has run out of the cabin to see if they can go find cell service or get in contact with someone. And they're really, really scared that they are in a horror movie, because they are horror film buffs and they have reenacted their town's namesake for their entire high school lives. They are very well aware of horror tropes. They are very well aware of what tropes they fall into as well. And so it's interesting because you're watching them. It's kind of like Scream, where you're watching them talk through the things that they know about horror movies and then still make the same mistakes. So I always appreciate that about slasher films. I like when slasher films, as I mentioned with the last book, talk about the essence of a slasher film. I'm interested to see how E.L. Chen, because obviously recent slasher books and slasher media in general is trying to put the slasher genre over its head, discuss the tropes, do what Scream has done essentially. And I'm interested to see how E.L. Chen tackles that with this book. So that is my current next read. I do have to go pick up my son. We're going to go to my mom's, so I'm likely not going to read another third until later tonight, but I'll probably update you then. Hello, I hope you don't mind this awkward lighting and maybe the sounds. I did go to a super quiet room at work. Hopefully this is okay, but I wanted to give my second update for Slasher Summer, just so you guys know that I am still enjoying it. We've only had 1 known kill so far, and we're not at the point right now where they start turning on one another, which usually happens around this point. But it did take quite a bit of time, I found personally, for the kills to start, despite the faster pacing of the novel. But I think a lot of it in the beginning was really establishing the relationships and why they weren't friends anymore, why they were coming back together, the relationships between the characters, and how they fit into the slasher stereotypes that they would normally fall into. I'm enjoying the writing so far. I'm very interested to see who the ultimate, obviously, slasher is. I'm interested to see how he's related to the characters. We have a bit of red herrings here and there. So we have Russ, which is the creepy state trooper that Claire met on her trip to the gas station, and he's really weird, and they have some sort of past with him where I guess they weren't very nice to him. I don't think they let him into their like movie group. So they have this like dynamic with him. I don't know if not being let into a movie group in high school is a substantial reason to commit murder. We'll see. We also have Claire's psychotic ex-boyfriend named Daniel, who was mentally, I think, physically abusive to her as well, and just enjoyed Claire for being this like virgin character, because as you know, they played the roles of the characters in the movie, so they sort of personify the movie. And for fans, this is like a really fun thing because they get to interact with them. And so Claire is this like virginal character, and her ex-boyfriend is very, very obsessed with her. He could potentially be the killer, but I don't think it's either of them, obviously. So I'm very interested to see like who it is. But that's it. I'm enjoying it as much as you can enjoy a slasher, so it's nothing like crazy right now. But I wanted to give this update at work because I have a lot of like emails to do today and just like menial typing stuff. So I just want to have something in my ears, and I would like for it to be summer slasher. Hello, it's a new day. Am I suffering this morning? Yes. I think it is because of the current like fires that are going on in Canada right now. Our air is like very and that's how I feel this morning. You don't care about my sickness or my health because we're not married. So let's talk about my final thoughts for Summer Slasher by E.L. Chen, which I did in fact finish yesterday at work. And I gave this a 3.5 stars. I don't think anyone is really surprised. I feel pretty similarly about most slasher books unless they do something like really, really, really insane. And I feel the same about slasher movies as well. Scream is my favorite franchise. Scream is my favorite series. Do I understand that maybe better slashers have come out after Scream? Possibly yes. Do I feel like they're better than Scream? No. So that's how I feel about slasher books as well. I think they're always going to be mid-level for me just because I've consumed so much slasher media that I can sort of see like different twists coming, or I have rather like higher expectations for the media that I'm consuming. And I think that's fairly clear with both Not Your Final Girl and Summer Slasher, but let's get into my final thoughts. So I feel like, much like with Not Your Final Girl, this was really, really fun until the very end. I think the setup for this was the most interesting part for me because it reminded me a lot of Scream 2 and Scream 3. I enjoyed the idea that our main characters are reenactors of the slasher film series that was set in their town. I like that people go to these midnight showings and these characters reenact the roles that are in these movies. And so they really, really fell within these tropes in the book as well, which I thought was a very interesting like take on giving them specific character tropes. It made Chen's commentary on those specific slasher tropes to feel more cheeky and fun because we're all in on the joke. Much like with Not Your Final Girl, there's a lot of POVs to follow, but again, I don't feel like it was really a hindrance. They were all very interesting. I feel like they were all different in their own way, so it made following them very easy. And again, because they fell into these specific character tropes, it felt very campy and cheesy, but in a good way, like a slasher film would be. I was having honestly a grand old time listening to this until the ultimate final reveal of who the slasher is and what motivations they had. I think it was interesting and a fun twist on like the usual suspicions. But what bothered me about this one and what bothered me about Not Your Final Girl is that we are in the mind of this killer until the ultimate reveal. And I think that this is becoming a very big pet peeve of mine because we are reading this book as an omniscient narrator. So we're in their thoughts and we're in their specific POV the entire time that we're in the book. For someone who is ultimately there to kill everyone, you're telling me that they never think about it once? When we're in their POV, they never think about killing one time? I don't know. Obviously, it's for the purpose of the final reveal. Obviously, it's to keep us on our toes, to keep us suspecting everyone. And maybe there are like subtle hints, but I think it just really, really bothers me. Like, and why I think it works maybe better in media because we're not in their head, right? They're not talking out loud in a movie like, I want to kill someone because they're obviously doing it in their head. But when you're in their head in the book, I don't know. I find it very weird. I think it's a really big pet peeve of mine. It ultimately makes the ending feel so much more cheesy than I think a slasher already is. So that's my one complaint. But I guess if you don't have a POV of this character, you might think that they're the slasher, right? Because you're not following them. I don't know. I don't know what the perfect like medium would be. I think probably it would be to have an outside perspective from the friend group. I don't know what the perfect solution is, but I give this a 3.5 stars. Unfortunately, I didn't have any more slasher books on my NetGalley TBR. So I did move into the next book that I had to read, which was a May release. Sorry to the publishers. House of Margins by Tlotlo Samesi. And I read one other book from Samasi before. Yes, Womb City, which was a really interesting like science fiction reimagining of like The Handmaid's Tale. And I thought that it was really, really cool, really, really interesting. When I saw that this was a newest release, I was like, okay, I need to read more from this author. I already wanted to. And this sounds really good. Our main character, Renewa's sister, Anaya, is missing after going to this like writer's retreat at a very famous house. So a trope that's been very, very big, I find, in the publishing sphere. And basically, Anaya was sent there to supposedly create the next big African literary masterpiece with other four young emerging authors, and only two of them survived, I believed, and Anaya is the one that didn't make it home. Renewa receives this message that a podcast is being created from one of the authors who survived whatever happened at Gunter House. And so we're following Renewa as she's listening to this, reading the comments, reading the articles being published about this. So it already has elements that I like, which is different media formats within a book. I love a fake podcast. I love when comments are in a book. I think it really grounds the book, yes, in our era, but I think it adds an element of like understanding and mystery for you as a reader, because you're like, this could honestly happen currently right now. So we're following a like and then there were none type of vibe. So there's a very mysterious home. They're there for like specific purposes. Currently, where we are in the book, we are following Anaya's story in the podcast, and we are learning how weird and eerie the home is and how it sort of like haunts them at night, while at the same time they're expected to write these books. Renewa herself is not a fully fleshed out character, obviously, at this point, because we are really just following her sister's story. But we slowly get these little glimpses into Renewa's life, her relationship with her parents, her relationship with her sister, and consuming this media and what it is doing for them and their family dynamics. And also the fact that everybody is learning about what occurred to Anaya as well. So far, I have to say I'm enjoying it. Like I said, I love a mixed media format, so this was going to appeal to me. And I think there's going to be some interesting discussions as we move forward, because it takes place in South Africa. And obviously, what with the history and racial dynamics there, with apartheid, with the fact that this is Gunter House, which is a like German or Netherlands type of word, which essentially is, I think, going to greatly impact the relationship that these authors have with the publisher and with this house in general, and what it's going to do to them. So I'm very intrigued by this mystery. So far, I really enjoy the writing, and I'm looking forward to continuing this. I am taking the rest of the day off after this morning just because I feel like garbage, but I think I'm going to go for dumplings because those always make me feel better. But yeah, like I said, my throat is really, really itchy. My nose is very much blocked, and I do think it is due to the wildfires. I'm very sensitive to like allergies outside. So I think that that's what's doing it for me. But I'm going to continue listening to this before I go out for lunch, and we'll probably update you later on the next third. Hello, please ignore how sweaty I am. I just went for a run, but I did want to come talk to you because today is the day that we're going to finish House of Margins. I got another third of the way through yesterday. I had a pretty busy day yesterday because I was just like generally not feeling well. So I went out for lunch for dumplings and, the day escaped me. But I did manage to get that other third of the way through. I'm still enjoying it. It's still very mysterious. There's multiple things occurring at once. So it's very much something is happening at the house. The house has its own personality. There is discussions about colonialization and what white people did specifically in South Africa, colonizing the area, colonizing the people, and what led to apartheid. And our like side main character, I guess, Anaya, is working with the ghosts of the home to be able to tell their story and write this tale about what occurred to them. That is all happening in the house in like the past tense in Anaya's point of view through the podcast that Renewa is listening to in the current timeline. And she's trying to solve exactly what happened. And at this point, this podcast has taken over. It's very, very popular. People are upset that this podcast is popular, obviously, because there's discussions of utilizing a family's tragedy to further one's own career. So there's some discussions on that. Miche, who is the one doing the podcast, was also at the house. And I think she is the only white person. So that insinuates that in the modern timeline, she is once again using a Black story to further her own career. All of these discussions, very, very interesting. The story, very, very thrilling because it's taking place in like a haunted house of sorts. I'm very interested to see how this story ends because so far, like, I really honestly, truly do not have any complaints. Welcome to the end of the vlog and welcome to our final review of House of Margins. Honestly, this one is the success of the vlog. I really liked this one. I've read from Tamase before. I read Womb City, and I always find that their concepts are really, really, really interesting and so weird, which always pulls me in. I'm always going to be intrigued by their books, I think. Automatically, this had, outside of like the weird concept, this had the makings for a stellar read for me. There's a haunted house, which I always enjoy, an author competition, which I always enjoy. Sisterhood, obviously, I am a sister of two sisters, so that was going to intrigue me. And then mixed media, podcasts, articles, like that stuff always gets me in a book. So this had the makings of everything that I enjoy. And I think it was brilliantly done overall. I really liked our two main characters. I liked how we switched in between them. I liked viewing both of their stories. Renewa and Anaya were just very interesting characters in general. I enjoyed Renewa's motivation to find her missing sister, and I loved Anaya's story about literally being haunted by ghosts in a haunted house. Specifically, that this haunted house is a Cape Dutch home, and how this enveloped discussions on colonialism and white supremacy, which was definitely felt within like the setting, obviously, and the more surrealist aspects that the novel takes. I didn't really talk about it too much, but the ancestral ties to this land are definitely like woven in brilliantly. I really enjoyed how Tamase handled this discussion, even if sometimes it was, as you can imagine, depicted quite graphically. I feel like just everything with the setting solidified these overall themes in a really, really impactful way. I did find the middle portion of the novel, when we start to really dive into the more surrealist aspects, to be a tad confusing, but I think the novel really comes in and hones in that last third, that I just fully understood everything at the end. I really, really enjoyed it, and I just highly recommend this book. I think it was like almost honestly a 5-star. It was so good. So let's just summarize my overall thoughts for the rest of the books. We had Not Your Final Girl by Michaela Rudolph, kind of sort of setting up a theme for the vlog, and I ended up giving this 3 stars. I thought it was fun, but was it doing anything new? Not really. Similarly with Slasher Summer by E.L. Chen, I gave it a 3.5 stars. It had the elements making it a tad more interesting than Not Your Final Girl, but there was still elements that I think are a pet peeve of mine for reading slashers, and so I guess it's just not living up to like my preconceived expectations. And of course, House of Margins by Toto Samase, which I gave a 4 stars. Spooky, scary, impactful, really, really interesting. Loved it. The one I recommend the most from this vlog, I'd say. But that's it. Please let me know down below if you've read any of these books, because by this point, they are no longer advanced reader copies. Did you like them? Did you hate them? Let me know. If you would like to follow me on any of my other social medias, and they still exist, I always leave a link down below to my Twitter, Goodreads, and Instagram if you would like to follow me there. And of course, because it is the end of the video, please do not forget to like, subscribe, and ring the notification bell. It does wonders for my channel. Makes me feel really good. And that's it. I never know how to end these things, so I will see you next time. Okay, bye!